The archival records of the Galactic Concordance would later note the precise moment humanity became a subject of universal intrigue. Galactic Standard Cycle 7392, Quadrant 9, when the Krex Observational Fleet first compiled their comprehensive report on human civilization. Their initial findings were complicated. Imagine attempting to understand a species through fragmented transmissions, satellite imagery, and intercepted communications. The Krex researchers had spent decades meticulously analyzing every scrap of human data, creating elaborate psychological profiles and predictive models of human behavior. Their primary conclusion: humans were fundamentally inexplicable. Consider the evidence. A species that simultaneously developed nuclear technology and cartoon characters about talking sponges. A civilization capable of launching precision-guided missiles and creating intricate origami sculptures. A culture that could annihilate entire continents and then immediately organize global relief efforts for the survivors. The Krex diplomatic corps found human conflict resolution particularly baffling. Most galactic civilizations viewed warfare as a continuous negotiation, a complex dance of ongoing tensions, proxy conflicts, and generational grudges. Conflict was a language, a form of communication. Humans, by contrast, seemed to approach conflict like a home renovation project. They identified a problem, assembled overwhelming resources, solved it with brutal efficiency, and then stopped. Completely. Utterly. As if the entire endeavor was nothing more than an inconvenient chore to be checked off a to-do list. Their wars didn't simmer. They erupted, consumed everything in their path, and then extinguished themselves with a finality that left other species bewildered. The Krex researchers would spend countless cycles trying to understand this approach. They would compile reports, create intricate mathematical models, and hold endless conferences. They would fail spectacularly to comprehend the fundamental truth about humans. Humans didn't start fights to continue them. They started fights to end them. Captain Mara Reese wasn't born into diplomacy. She was forged in the crucible of humanity's most complex conflict resolution scenarios. Her career was a masterclass in turning potential disasters into diplomatic footnotes. A third-generation military strategist, Mara had inherited her grandmother's sharp mind and her father's complete inability to tolerate bureaucratic nonsense. Her file read like a greatest hits compilation of impossible diplomatic missions. Syria-Mars border reconciliation. The Jupiter colony trade dispute, the Great Ganymede water rights negotiation. Each mission ended not just resolved, but with such definitive clarity that future conflicts became mathematically improbable. Standing 5'8" with eyes that could slice through diplomatic double-speak, Mara carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen the universe's complexity and found it mildly amusing. Her standard-issue diplomatic uniform was always impeccable, with just enough deliberate imperfection to signal she wasn't trying too hard. Diplomacy, she was fond of saying, is just warfare with better paperwork. Her first officer, Jack Rodriguez, was the perfect counterpoint to her calculated intensity. A former stand-up comedian turned diplomatic strategist, Jack possessed the rare ability to diffuse tension with a single well-timed joke. His personnel file was a marvel of contradictions, commendations for crisis management sitting alongside reprimands for inappropriate humor during high-stakes negotiations. Jack's specialty was reading rooms and entire planetary delegations. Where Mara was the surgical instrument, he was the unexpected pressure release valve. His laugh could turn a potential interstellar incident into a moment of shared humanity. Navigation Officer Elena Kimura rounded out the core team. A mathematical prodigy with reflexes that made quantum computers look sluggish. Elena could calculate diplomatic probability vectors faster than most species could complete a simple greeting. Her family had been interstellar navigators for generations, and she approached diplomacy like a complex navigation problem, all potential trajectories, minimal collision risks. The persistent diplomacy their interstellar vessel was more than a ship. It was a mobile testament to humanity's unique approach to galactic relations, equipped with translation systems that could interpret not just language, but cultural nuance, communication protocols that anticipated misunderstandings before they happened, and defensive systems that screamed, "We can solve this without fighting." But we're absolutely prepared if you disagree. Humanity's interstellar diplomatic status was unique and not peacekeepers, not conquerors, problem solvers. A civilization that had learned often the hard way that the most efficient solution was the one that prevented future conflicts. The persistent diplomacy didn't just represent a mission. It represented a philosophy. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was the radical concept that conflicts could be resolved, completely, permanently. And if resolution required something more direct, well, they were prepared for that too. The Krex delegation arrived precisely 3 standard galactic hours late, which was apparently a sign of profound respect in their culture. Captain Mara Reese checked her watch and mentally calculated how many bureaucratic forms this delay would generate. High Coordinator's rank led the delegation, a massive creature resembling what would happen if a lobster accidentally mated with a filing cabinet. His exoskeleton gleamed with diplomatic insignia, each metallic patch presumably representing some obscure galactic achievement. 12 appendages moved with a combination of military precision and bureaucratic awkwardness. Humans of Earth, Zrank clicked and whistled, the translation matrix converting his sounds into something resembling formal diplomatic English. We approach with calculated neutrality and minimal aggressive potential. Jack Rodriguez leaned toward Elena Kimura and whispered, "Is that how they say hello?" Elena's fingers were already dancing across her probability calculation interface. "Technically, that's closer to we come in peace, but we're definitely judging you." The initial moments of first contact are crucial in interstellar diplomacy. Most species prepare elaborate protocols, rehearse potential scenarios, develop intricate communication strategies. The Krex had spent 743 cycles studying human communication patterns. They believed they understood everything. They were hilariously wrong. "We have extensively analyzed your species' conflict resolution methodologies," Zrank announced, mandibles clicking with what passed for excitement in Krex culture. "Your historical records suggest a concerning pattern of comprehensive problem elimination." Mara's eyebrow raised a fraction of a millimeter, her version of uncontrolled surprise. "You mean we solve problems?" she responded, her tone suggesting they were discussing something as mundane as fixing a malfunctioning coffee machine. The Krex delegation's communication tendrils began a complex dance of confusion. Their entire diplomatic approach was predicated on the idea that conflicts were perpetual negotiations, ongoing discussions that could span generations. Conflict was communication. Resolution was failure. Humans, by contrast, saw conflict as a bug, not a feature. "When your species encounters a problem," Zrank continued, "you do not engage in multi-generational discourse. You resolve it. Completely." Jack couldn't resist. "One and done, buddy. We're efficiency experts with really good weapons." Elena's probability matrix was spinning complex calculations. The chances of misunderstanding? Approximately 87.3%. The chances of an unexpected diplomatic resolution? Precisely 12.7%. The Krex had expected posturing, threats, displays of technological superiority. Instead, they received pragmatic competence. "Let me be clear," Mara said, leaning forward slightly. Her eyes locked on Zrank. "We're not interested in endless conflicts. We solve problems. Thoroughly. And then we move on." The translation matrix struggled to convey the nuanced mixture of promise and mild threat contained in those few words. The Krex delegation went very, very quiet. The next diplomatic session began with Zrank presenting what he believed was an irrefutable challenge to human moral superiority. Historical records of human conflicts, meticulously compiled, projected onto the conference room's holographic display. "Observe," he clicked triumphantly, "your species' history of devastation." The display showed wars, conflicts, moments of human brutality. Mara didn't flinch. Jack didn't even suppress a chuckle. "And?" she prompted. The Krex delegation exchanged confused appendage movements. This was not the reaction they expected. Elena's translation matrix caught the subtext of their communication. They were waiting for humans to defend themselves, to explain away the violence. Instead, they got clinical observation. "You misunderstand mercy," Mara explained, her voice the vocal equivalent of a precision surgical instrument. "Humans don't start conflicts to continue them. We start conflicts to end them. Completely." She began walking them through human conflict resolution philosophy. Each historical example wasn't just a tale of violence, but a case study in comprehensive problem-solving. World War E wasn't just a defeat of an ideology. It was a complete reconstruction of entire societies, enemies transformed into allies with such thoroughness that future conflict became mathematically improbable. The Marshall Plan wasn't charity. It was strategic conflict elimination. "We don't just defeat opponents," Jack added. "We give them a better alternative. Conflict is expensive. Peace is profitable." The Krex were beginning to understand why human history was so terrifying. Humans didn't just fight wars. They surgically dismantled entire systems of conflict, replacing them with functional alternatives so quickly and thoroughly that future generations would struggle to imagine the previous state of affairs. Zrank's translation matrix was working overtime. "You consider total systemic transformation, Mercy?" "Mercy? We consider comprehensive resolution the most merciful approach," Mara responded. The revelation was dawning on the Krex delegation. Human mercy wasn't weakness. It was the most ruthlessly efficient conflict resolution mechanism in the known galaxy. They had studied human conflicts and seen destruction. They were now understanding the reconstruction. The wars ended. Societies were rebuilt. Enemies became partners. One and done. Elena's probability matrices were spinning complex calculations. The Krex were transitioning from confusion to a bizarre combination of terror and respect. Humans didn't just fight differently. They solved problems with such complete finality that the very concept of ongoing conflict became absurd. "We don't start fights to continue them," Mara said, her final summation. "We start fights to make continuing them impossible." The Krex delegation went very, very quiet. The final diplomatic session erupted like a pressure cooker finally releasing steam. Rank, all 12 appendages extended in what passed for maximum Krex agitation, launched into what he believed would be his definitive argument. "Your historical records demonstrate systematic violence," he clicked and whistled. "How can you claim to be agents of resolution?" Mara didn't move, didn't blink. Just looked at Zrank with the kind of patience typically reserved for explaining basic mathematics to particularly stubborn children. "Violence is a tool," she responded, "not a goal." Jack chose that moment to pull up a holographic display, not of war, not of destruction, but of post-conflict reconstructions. Hiroshima's transformation, Germany's economic resurrection, elaborative international space programs born from former Cold War tensions. "We don't fight to fight," Elena added, her mathematical precision cutting through the diplomatic tension. "We fight to create conditions where fighting becomes obsolete." The Krex delegation's communication tendrils began a complex dance of genuine confusion and emerging understanding. The unexpected twist came not from the humans, but from the Krex's own archival data, their own historical records, when viewed through human perspective, revealed something profound. The Krex had been perpetuating conflicts as a form of cultural communication. Humans saw conflicts as problems to be solved. Zrank's primary communication appendage drooped, a gesture of profound intellectual surrender. "You don't wage war," he realized. "You perform systemic recalibration." Yet Jack couldn't help himself. "We're basically intergalactic system administrators, with really good weapons." The humor punctured the tension. The Krex delegation began making sounds that their translation matrix identified as laughter, a discovery almost as surprising as their newfound understanding of human conflict, a resolution. Mara stepped forward, one hand casually resting near but not on her diplomatic resolution toolkit, a move that simultaneously suggested peace and preparedness. "We prefer peace," she said, "but we're exceptionally good at creating the conditions for peace when required." The Krex understood now. Humanity's approach wasn't about destruction. It was about comprehensive problem-solving, about creating systems so stable, so functional, that future conflict became mathematically improbable. 1. And done. Zrang's final communication was both a surrender and a statement of profound respect. Humans, he clicked, are not a species that wages war. You are a species that performs surgical systemic interventions. Jack grinned. We'll take that. The diplomatic mission was complete, not with a bang, not with a whimper, but with mutual understanding. The Galactic Diplomatic Archives would later record the Krex-human encounter as a pivotal moment in interstellar relations, not as a triumph of peaceful negotiation, exactly, more as a masterclass in pragmatic problem-solving that left most galactic civilizations simultaneously terrified and impressed. Humanity's reputation was now officially beyond comprehension. The Krex Collective spent the next 743 galactic cycles attempting to fully understand human diplomatic methodology. Research teams compiled reports. Xenosociologists wrote exhaustive dissertations. Diplomatic academies created entire coursework dedicated to deciphering the human approach to conflict resolution. They would fail spectacularly. Jack Rodriguez, now a senior diplomatic advisor, kept a running tally of alien civilizations that tried and failed to fully categorize human behavior. It was less a professional record and more an interstellar comedy journal. Captain Mara Reese retired from active diplomatic service with the kind of reputation that made entire planetary systems think twice before considering aggressive negotiations. Her farewell speech was typically concise. We're happy to talk. We're even happier to solve problems, permanently. The universe had learned a critical lesson about humanity. They weren't peacekeepers. They weren't warmongers. They were problem solvers with an impressively low tolerance for ongoing nonsense. Elena Kimura's probability matrices continued to fascinate and confound galactic researchers. Her predictive models of human conflict resolution defied traditional statistical analysis. They didn't just predict outcomes. They calculated the most efficient path to comprehensive resolution. Zrang and the Krex Collective became unexpected advocates for human diplomatic approach, not out of friendship, not out of fear, but out of a grudging respect for a species that could turn potential galactic conflicts into collaborative opportunities faster than most civilizations could file a complaint. Humanity's message to the galaxy remained unchanged and beautifully simple. We're here to help. One and done.